President Biden making his way to Poland after an unannounced visit to Ukraine. Nearly 1 year since Russia's full-scale invasion, President Biden met with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky in Kyiv, sending a strong signal of support for Ukraine in its fight against Russia. Chief Foreign Correspondent Ian Pannell has the latest from Kyiv.
President Biden crossing into the war zone. Unprecedented security in the capital, Kyiv, as all major roads are sealed off. Hundreds of armed police and army lining the streets. Air raid sirens ringing out as the president walked alongside President Zelensky. A reminder of the dangers Ukrainians have faced every single day for almost a year.
Kyiv stands, and Ukraine stands. Democracy stands. The Americans stands with you, and the world stands with you.
President Biden and Zelensky paying their respects at the Wall of the Heavenly Hundred to commemorate those who've lost their lives in the protest for freedom in 2014, and a place that also honors Ukrainian war dead.
Thank you very much for coming, Mr. President. That is a huge moment of supporting of the Ukraine.
As the president spoke, in the east of the country, intense battles raging, especially around the key city of Bakhmut.
Unchecked aggression is a threat to all of us.
Russian forces are now engaged in intense street-to-street battles as the death toll rises on both sides. Ukraine low on ammunition and firepower. Today, Biden announcing more military aid. Russia also looking for military support. Secretary of State Blinken warning his Chinese counterpart to not supply lethal military aid to Moscow. The Chinese hitting back, accusing the US of pressing lies and saying it was America sending weapons, not China.
Freedom is priceless. It's worth fighting for as long as it takes. And that's how long we're going to be with you, Mr. President, for as long as it takes.
We'll do it.
Thank you.
Our Chief Foreign Correspondent Ian Pannell joins me live now from Kyiv, along with ABC's Ines de la Quatara in Warsaw, Poland, for more on this. Thank you both for being on. Ian, how significant is this visit by President Biden?
I mean, I think it's highly significant. It's historic. American presidents famously have visited war zones, but primarily where American troops are serving in Iraq and Afghanistan. If you go back further in history, there are other examples as well. I certainly can't find any reference to any serving American president going to an active war zone where American troops weren't serving. So it sends a very powerful signal that is very well received by Ukrainians today, of solidarity, of support. Remember, this is a key moment, of course, for Ukraine as we come up to the one-year anniversary of the war, but also a key moment, I think, for President Biden. He has thrown his lot behind President Zelensky in supporting Ukraine. He's made it very clear in a number of addresses over the last few days he's going to stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes. But part of his challenge, of course, is also rallying the allies, rallying the other NATO members who are also behind Ukraine to stay in it potentially for the long haul, and also to try and give Ukraine the kind of weapons that it says it needs to try and change the dynamic on the battlefield. And the situation at the moment is very difficult. Fascinating dynamics here in Ukraine. We've seen a number of historic days today, but there was unprecedented security this morning. It was clear something was going to happen. There was this unannounced trip, but everybody started to whisper perhaps it was President Biden. And you see in the words, I think, that he said there in front of President Zelensky, that this is an important moment for America, an important moment for Ukraine, and that America intends to stay the course in backing Ukraine all the way.
Now, Inez, this was an unannounced trip. So what kind of security plans go into an event like this?
Yeah, so we knew the president was set to arrive here in Warsaw on Tuesday morning. That's what we expected. There had been speculation that he might use this opportunity to go to Ukraine, that he might use this opportunity to maybe meet with the Ukrainian president here in Poland. The White House repeatedly shot down those rumors, saying a trip to Kyiv was not in the works. They had even released his official schedule for Monday yesterday. They had the president departing Monday night, arriving Tuesday morning. We now know that even as that schedule was being released, the president had already already departed. So all of this secrecy, like you say, because of security concerns, real concerns about President Biden's security. We're still trying to piece together just how Biden got into Ukraine. We know he departed with a small group of advisors, a small group of reporters, that they had been sworn to secrecy, that they weren't even allowed to carry their cell phones with them. It's reminiscent of when Ukrainian President Zelensky made the trip over to Washington. You'll remember that trip also came as a surprise. But I think it's interesting to note, like Ian just mentioned, that we have seen other U.S. presidents going to other war zones, places like Iraq, Afghanistan. The big difference here is that there are no U.S. troops on the ground, of course, to kind of oversee the logistics here. There are no areas in Ukraine that are controlled by American forces where it would be safe for the president to fly in and out of. So that was the big concern here, and that's why there was so much secrecy surrounding this trip.
And Ukraine's military intelligence agency has accused Russia of planning to stage, quote, large-scale nuclear exercises to coincide with President Biden's visit. What's the latest on that?
Yeah, that's right. They're essentially accusing the Russians of preparing nuclear-capable missiles from submarines, possibly nuclear-capable bombers, in some kind of show of force. No one's suggesting they're going to detonate nuclear devices, but that it will be a show of force to coincide with President Biden's visit. But President Putin is going to speak tomorrow and the day after on National Armed Forces Day. He's going to address both members of the House tomorrow, of the Russian chamber tomorrow. We have to wait and see what he says, but I think there are real concerns that as we come up to the one-year anniversary, that Putin may seek to escalate in order to potentially de-escalate at some point in the future. Things are still not going well. Putin has very little to show for his year-long invasion of Ukraine, and I think he needs to try and change the dynamic on the battlefield. I'm not so sure they can do that, but I think everyone will now focus attention away from Kyiv towards Moscow to see what President Putin has to say.
All right, Ian Pannell in Kyiv and Ezra Qatar in Warsaw, thank you. And national security and defense analyst Mick Mulroy joins us now to discuss the high-profile visit. Mick, this is Biden's first visit to Ukraine since Russia's invasion started nearly a year ago. Biden announced new military aid for Ukraine, saying artillery, ammunition, howitzers, javelins, they'll all be making their way there. So what do you think this visit and this aid will do for Ukraine at this point in the war?
So, Diane, I would agree with everything that was just said about how important this is, how significant it was for a president to visit a war zone, not only where U.S. troops aren't present, but U.S. troops didn't control the actual war zone. That's a big risk to anybody, especially the president of the United States. So I think this is very significant. Those are all things that they need, particularly the ammunition. It's going to be almost a war of attrition when it comes to ammunition, but they're also going to need close air support, so aircraft, long-range artillery fires, which can really give them the ability to reach back into the logistics system of the Russians and cause them great difficulty in doing anything but supporting what they already have. So certainly a significant visit by the leader of the free world, and important message to the Ukrainians that I think that the United States is sending, that the U.S. is going to be in this for the long term.
Now, senior administration officials say the U.S. alerted Russia to Biden's trip to Ukraine a few hours ahead of time. Why do that? And what else goes into ensuring security when a president travels to a war zone like this?
So there's a lot that goes into the security. As already mentioned, they don't announce a visit, they deny the visit, they block all communications for anybody traveling with the president. There's a big security presence on the ground, both overtly and covertly. There's a lot of coordination, as you would guess, between the Secret Service, State Department, U.S. military, and the intelligence community, all to prevent any potential attack. And that would likely goes into essentially warning Russia. Once it's obvious that there's a significant person coming from the United States, and then, of course, when he gets on the ground, it's going to be very quickly before people realize it's the president. It's better just to tell the Russians he's in Kyiv. Any act toward Kyiv right now could be considered an act toward the United States, and it would escalate severely. So it's better just to warn them, to let them know that it's happening, so there's no mistakes that could essentially, trigger a conflict between the United States and Russia in this occurrence.
And Mick, Biden also announced new sanctions to come later this week against, quote, elites and companies that are trying to evade or backfill Russia's war machine. How effective are these kinds of sanctions?
Well, Russia's having a very difficult time keeping up with its own ammunition. They're purchasing back munitions they sold to North Korea 10 years ago. So anything that we can do to limit the supply of ammunition going to the Russian effort in Ukraine is important. One or two might not add up to much, but certainly as we keep finding these entities and sanction them and stopping them from providing these munitions, that's important.
All right, national security and defense analyst Mick Mulroy, thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.